Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is March 13th, 2019. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope everyone is doing well. This is the Economic Podcast, so let's get straight to some of that news. The S&P was up 19 points. The Dow was up 148. NASDAQ up 52. The Russell 2000, the small cap index, was up 6 points. Oil closed above $58 a barrel, so I don't know if we're starting to get into that place where Donald Trump's call for a weaker dollar is now starting to have an effect on oil prices. Of course, we had a decline in the stockpiles. Our oil inventory was down, so of course that's going to have your supply-demand functions playing out there, and so you have a higher price for oil. But that's not a good thing for the consumer, we're told. You can't have higher costs. Will the president come out and tweet again at OPEC and Russia for continuing with their production cuts? I don't know. He might do it for OPEC. I don't know about Russia. It's kind of the Russia collusion thing. I don't know if he's going to go with that. All the talk about the collusion and being in Vladimir Putin's pocket. I don't know if he'll call Russia out on their production cuts, but he may come back at OPEC. But we'll keep you posted on that. But right now, at least we have a weaker dollar. We have lower inventory levels on oil, and now we have a higher price as a result. Gold and silver remain pretty much unchanged. Gold remains above $1,300 an ounce. Silver remains about $15.50 an ounce. U.S. Treasury, 10-year, is up a little bit. Now sits at 2.61%. So I know yesterday we were talking about how there may have been a disconnect between the bond market and the stock market, and how there was presumably a flight to safety yesterday, and you had a lot more capital flowing into the bond market and looking at Uncle Sam as a safe haven. And I told you guys, typically when that happens, you're going to get a pullback of some sort in the stock market. Well, overnight, that was the case. You had the U.S. futures in the red. That was no doubt what I thought was going to happen, and at least is how the futures saw it too. But then we had some positive news. We had durable goods better than expected, and we had them up, increasing for the third straight month. So that's good news. And of course, durable goods has to do with things that last a long time. Dishwashers, washing machines, that type of stuff, refrigerators, things that are durable, they're going to last a while. So that's good news. That's in the right direction. Again, it's not all doom and gloom here. I am just looking at the longer arc of where things are more likely headed than not. And I continue to say that it's going to the downside. We are on a 10-year bull market. We just celebrated the 10th anniversary this Monday. So there's no surprise that we are at the end of a business cycle. We are very likely at the end of this bull market run. We are coming to an end of a credit cycle. Despite the fact that this is a never-tried-before global monetary policy experiment with zero interest rate policy, with quantitative easing, and depending on what country you're in, you might even have negative interest rates. It's starting to come to an end. It is starting to unravel. They know it. The powers that be know it. The central bankers know it. The governments know it. They're throwing everything in the kitchen sink at all of these economies around the world, trying to stimulate and trying to prop up that which cannot be propped up anymore. Just let it be. Let it take its course. But they don't want to take responsibility for anything. So, again, we could solve this as responsible adults, as responsible and hopefully productive citizens who want to take our political futures in our hands and do something about it. But, of course, that doesn't take place because nobody's honest with you, except me and a few other people out there. We don't want to do that, so we're just going to continue to kick the can down the road. And we're going to have to pay the piper. The market is going to take care of it for us. And let me tell you something. It's going to be a heck of a lot worse when the market takes care of it, when the piper takes care of it, as opposed to you and me and our elected officials. But this is the world we live in. So you have to do your best to prepare yourself. Prepare yourself the best you can. Now, at the time of this podcast, as I'm speaking to you guys right now, the Nikkei, the Japanese market, is up 141 points, and the Hong Kong markets are up 28 points. Of course, that could change as the day goes through, but that's where they stand right now. And because I do these podcasts a little later in the evening, I do like to keep you guys updated on that, just so you're in the know. Now, we also had some continuing news in regards to Boeing, and obviously we've had a couple plane crashes over the course of a relatively short period of time in regards to the Boeing 737 MAX 8 and MAX 9 model. Well, as I reported to you guys yesterday, there are countries all over the world who were grounding those particular aircraft. Well, today, President Trump did the same for the United States, and we continue to see a big sell-off in the stock of Boeing, which is a main component of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. But get this. It was at $375. This is the Boeing stock, by the way. So it was at $375 a share. On the news of American flights being grounded, it dropped to $363 a share. So that was a nice drop. And then it rallied to close at the end of the day at $377. So it actually closed up for the day, despite the fact that the United States of America also joined this long list of other countries in grounding these particular aircraft. Now, what's behind this? I mean, is this the fixed market that I'm talking about here? Is this the rigged market? Or did it just happen to be a coincidence that this was a big sell-off and everybody who was selling short made their profits and they took their profits? And maybe people thought the bottom was in and then they bought the bottom. They just happened to buy the bottom. Trump was sending out a message. This is it. Whatever happens today is it. That's it. Now it's going to start rallying. I don't know, but that's what happened. That's what happened. The stock went down as anybody would have rationally expected, and it did. It took a nice big drop. And then it rallied at the end of the day to actually close up for the day. Now, the reason I want to stay on this for a little bit is for the following reason. Our acting defense secretary, Patrick Shanahan, he used to be a former Boeing executive. He was a bigwig. I mean, he was not a low man on the totem pole. He was a Boeing executive. Okay? I don't know how many of you are aware of this. I'm sure if we did a deep dive into not only the Defense Department, but almost any department of government, you're going to find people who are associated with big business one way or the other. Okay? I mean, just look at the Treasury Secretary for years now associated with Goldman Sachs or the big banks or the Federal Reserve. I mean, no surprise there. We shouldn't be surprised either when we have defense secretaries who were former executives of Boeing, of Lockheed Martin, of the military-industrial complex. I thought this president was supposed to drain the swamp. Well, how exactly is that draining the swamp when you pull executives from some of the largest corporations in the world associated with government contracts, defense contracts in particular, make them your defense secretary, and then get this, ladies and gentlemen, get this. Now, you can call me cynical. Of course, that's fine. I'm the co-author of The Cynic's Guide to Investing. So please call me cynical by all means. But let's just look at this. Donald Trump was elected in November of 2016. At that time, the price of Boeing stock was $150 a share. $150 a share, November 2016. A couple weeks ago, it was at $440 a share. That's a 193% gain. And more than doubled. Almost tripled. You see what I'm getting at here? Are you surprised? You have bigwigs at Boeing as a senior advisor to the President of the United States. Are we surprised that the stock of Boeing has nearly tripled? How has your bank account done? How has your savings rate treated you? Not too good, has it? Call up Chairman Jerome Powell of the Federal Reserve. Say, why aren't I getting any interest on my savings? I'm on a fixed income. I got very little savings. I'm not making anything on it. But Boeing, they tripled. They tripled. And of course, President Trump likes to tout that he gave $700 billion to the Defense Department in his first year, $716 billion his second year. And as I reported to you guys recently this week, in the $4.75 trillion 2019 budget, this monstrosity, my goodness, it's now, he's now giving 5% more than what the Defense Department asked for. I mean, what is going on here? What is going on here? I mean, how much more do they need? What is the purpose of this? Again, I am all for having a military that nobody wants to even think about threatening. I agree with that 100%. But you're telling me you have to spend, what's it going to be? I mean, if it's more, I would have to say, okay, so you got 700, let's just call it $700 billion a year. That's $2.1 trillion over 3 years. Over 3 years! I mean, what are they building? What are they making? They better have the best equipment known to mankind. No flaws, no problems, nothing. It boggles my mind. Where is all of this money going? Is it all being accounted for? I highly doubt it. I mean, you can go back and look at Inspector General's report as far as the Defense Department's concerned. There's billions, if not trillions of dollars unaccounted for. Unaccounted for. That's your money. That's my money. And we're just continuing to give them more and more money. But where's the accountability? Isn't that what this is supposed to be about? Isn't this supposed to be what draining the swamp is all about? Again, I like the president on a lot of things, but he doesn't get a blind pass just because I liked him and voted for him and happen to still think that he will win in 2020. He doesn't get a blind pass from me. It just doesn't happen. So these are serious questions. And this is the same thing if you looked at President Obama with Obamacare and healthcare and healthcare-related stocks. Same exact thing. Again, you could find this in the Cynic's Guide to Investing. Check it out. It's amazing how accurately we predicted all this stuff. It blows my mind. I knew we were good. I didn't know we were that good. It's just taking place one after the other. And in that instance, with President Obama in the healthcare sector, let's say, remember you had all of these companies coming out and saying, we're concerned that this is going to be an overreach by the government and that these stock prices are going to crash and yada, yada, yada. We're just not going to be able to make money. We're not going to make our margins. They're just going to put us out of business. Oh, really? Why don't you do that same exercise I just did with the share price of Boeing and do it for United Health, Humana, Aetna, a whole bunch of other pharmaceuticals, but primarily the health insurers? Look at their stocks. Look at those companies. And you look, because it was already back in 2010. I know it's going on a decade since Obamacare has been passed. And remember, we had a passage to know what was in it. That was Nancy Pelosi. Almost a decade. It was held up to be constitutional in 2012. And you just look at those stock prices over that time period. When it was passed to when it was held up to be constitutional, from that point to today, you would have been making money hand over fist. Hand over fist. And you didn't have to know which stock to buy. You could have bought an index. You could have bought a healthcare index. And we talked about that in the Cynic's Guide to Investing. That's what I did. I mean, you're making dividends. You're making long-term, short-term gains. I mean, you're going mad. I mean, it's writing on the wall. You have to pay attention. Now, the interesting thing's going to be is now you have Obamacare being reversed, and now you have some of these prescription drug costs that are supposedly going to be tackled by President Trump, and that's one of the things that I think that the administration and the Democrats and Congress can actually get on board with and tackle. So is that going to have a reverse effect on these healthcare companies? I don't know, but I'll keep you guys in tune as we get more and more details as we make our way through. So this really gets to the point of draining the swamp. You can't tell me you have this is as military-industrial complex as it gets when you have Boeing. And then like I was saying earlier, let's do a deep dive into the Department of Defense. How many other high-ranking officials in there, civilian-ranking officials, are from Boeing? How many are from Northrop Grumman? How many of them are from Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, Raytheon? The list goes on and on and on. How many are we paying? Is this pay for play? This is what I thought draining the swamp meant. We're cutting it out. We're not doing this crap anymore. But supposedly, if it's your side of the aisle, if it's your group of friends, well, this time it's different. I don't buy into that. I don't like it. Just like you had the Democrats in power, they love social programs, they love health care. Well, there you had it. Those healthcare companies are making money hand over fist and have been for a decade. Now you have the military-industrial complex and you have huge general defense contractors out there. Now they're making money hand over fist. And the other thing that you have now in relation to this, especially with Boeing, and this ties into the president's, it's just a fascination with the stock market. Again, why he's doing this, I don't know. He shouldn't. Boeing is a big component of the Dow, as I said earlier. So if the Dow gets hit like it has been, that has an effect on the overall market, on the overall performance of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And at its low today, when the Dow was at its lowest point, which obviously followed nicely with Boeing at their low point of $363 a share today, the Dow was down, I think, about 20 points. That was its low for the day. It was only being up 20 points. Well, it closed the day up 148. So it followed Boeing very nicely. And the president doesn't want a down market. Up, 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 and away, he says. So I don't know if this is a fixed market again. I think it is. Or if it was just the short sellers. They made nice profits over a couple of days selling Boeing stock short. Made a nice big profit, and they took their profits and left and went home. And then people started to bid up the price because they thought that was the bottom. I don't know. I'll keep you posted. Again, it was at $440 a share not too long ago. I personally wouldn't be surprised if it gets back there in a relatively short period of time, although there's going to be further information that'll come out eventually in regards to the investigation in the black box as to whether or not it was pilot error or if it was actually mechanical error, software error, something like that that was more that you could lay at the feet more at Boeing as opposed to the individual pilots. But I'll keep you guys posted on that. Now, the other thing I want to get into has to do, again, with this $4.75 trillion budget, because this goes in with the overarching thing of draining the swamp. I don't know for the life of me how we can have the largest budget ever proposed, $4.75 trillion. And that's just a budget. All right? I mean, you're going to spend, oh man, they're going to spend more than that if they get their way. How is that draining the swamp? How is giving $4.75 trillion to these idiots in Washington, D.C. draining the swamp? To misallocate it and misappropriate it and spend it foolishly on their buddies, because obviously the swamp is alive and well. Because the president has his buddies in the military-industrial complex making money hand over fist. You still have the Democrats and their buddies in the healthcare field making money hand over fist. So when are we actually going to see some of this drainage take place, if you will? When are we going to see it? Because I haven't seen it. I don't see any of it. I mean, I allude to some of these things in the geopolitical podcasts of maybe there is going to be some March Madness or something like that, and check those podcasts out to see what I mean by some of the fireworks that might be taking place. But I just don't see the concrete draining of the swamp. Where is it? 4.75 trillion? Can anybody out there truly fathom those numbers? I can't. This is for 1 year. This is for 1 year. This isn't for, well, we're tallying everything up since George Washington. No. This is for 1 year. 4.75 trillion. Oh my goodness, that is so much money, it's not even funny. And again, I have to refer you to the usdebtclock.org, usdebtclock.org. Check it out. It's real time. The numbers are going to make your head spin. They're all over the place. I'm looking at it right now. I'm going cross-eyed. There's so much red on this screen, it just makes you sick. But this is the reality we live in. $22 trillion in debt and counting. That's $67,000 per citizen. $180,000 per taxpayer. Get your checkbook out. Write Uncle Sam a check. I know you got it. Everybody has $180,000 lying around. Don't you? This is an economic miracle. Everybody's rich. Jerome Powell, the three stooges at the Federal Reserve, all they've been doing is printing money. Don't you have $180,000 lying around? Aren't you wealthy, healthy, and wise over these past 10 years? I don't think so, unfortunately. But if you do have 180 grand lying around, why don't you just cut your check? Cut your check and be done with it. That's what I do. Go up to Uncle Sam, say, here's that $180,000, I'm done. Walk away, say, don't tax me anymore. I'm done, I paid my share. But that's not going to happen. Not going to happen. The other thing I want to talk about with this, because what contributes in great part to our national debt obviously has to do with the mandatory spending, which is Social Security, which is a Ponzi scheme. You all know about that. And again, another reference back to the Cynic's Guide to Investing. We go into great detail in the national debt, our country's GDP, our deficits, Social Security, what it is, Medicare, Medicaid, what they do, all that stuff, all of that money being spent. Take a look at that book. Look at the analysis. I mean, you would think it was written yesterday. It was written 4 years ago. 2015, we published that book. It's as if we wrote it yesterday. The only sad thing is the numbers are much worse than what they were 4 years ago. So you look at Social Security, we're spending over $1 trillion a year. $1 trillion a year just on Social Security, giving it to people who, unfortunately, that's all they have to live off of. That's their retirement. They've been screwed by Uncle Sam for their entire adult lives. They've been taxed to death. Now they're hoping and praying they get something from Social Security, which of course does not take in the true cost of living adjustments, because there's no way, and we talk about this all the time, that your cost of living adjustments have only gone up 2% like they tell you. No way. No way. Look at your utility bill, look at your grocery bill, and a whole list of things. You wish it was only 2%. Then you have Medicare and Medicaid, which now combined has overtaken Social Security, which wasn't the case that many years ago. But if you understand the demographics of this country, and you have more and more people retiring, and because of the changes with Obamacare and that stuff, you have more people on Medicaid now. So now the spending on Medicare and Medicaid is over $1 trillion. It's $1.1 trillion. And Social Security is $1 trillion. So here's the interesting thing. As we enter this race in 2020, we're going to have Medicare for all. It's free. Everybody understand. Medicare is a right. Healthcare is a right. No questions, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Healthcare is supposed to be free. Let me tell you something, Bernie. It ain't free. It ain't free. Because here's my solution to all of this madness. It's one of many solutions. Again, you got to get rid of the Federal Reserve and the Fed, baby. End it now. And end the income tax. End it now. That's what you have to do. You don't do those two things, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going to believe you that you're saying you're going to solve a problem. I'm not going to believe you. It's all you're going to do is you're going to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. It's not going to solve anything. Just going to kick the can down the road. End the Fed and get rid of the income tax. Then you have my attention. So now you got this crazy idiot Bernie Sanders and the other lunatics on the left coming out and saying everything's free. All right, let's say this. Let's say we put a constitutional amendment in, and it's going to look like this. It'll be an opt-in clause. You lunatics can vote for whatever you want to. You can be crazy. I guess you have the right to be crazy. You can vote for crazy people to represent you, and I guess you can then put forth legislation that is just as crazy as you are. Okay, go ahead. If you want Medicare for all, that's free, have an opt-in clause. And when you go to work, you tell your employer, look, these left-wing lunatics voted for this. I happen to believe and agree with them. I want to opt in. So you can check that box, and that tax will be withheld from you to pay for the free Medicare. Now, did you hear what I just said? You have to pay for the free stuff. It's not free. Nothing is free. But of course, Bernie Sanders and Pocahontas aren't going to tell you that. Kamala Harris, Spartacus aren't going to tell you that. But you're going to have to pay for it. But you get my point? Let's have an opt-in clause. If you want to pay for Social Security, if you think Social Security is such a great idea, then you pay for it and you fund it. If you think Medicare and Medicaid are such a great idea, then you pay for it and fund it. If you don't, then you don't pay for it. I don't think those programs are going to be around for me. On top of that, I don't think that's the rule of government, so I don't want to pay for them. But I wouldn't have to opt out. You see, our Constitution, our founding fathers, they were really smart. They weren't crazy Bernie, okay? These guys actually had a couple brain cells to rub together. More than a couple, all right? Bernie, he's on his last fumes. He huffs another can of gasoline. He's done. But the founding fathers, those were some smart dudes, okay? And they understood the nature of government. And they understood what the relationship ought to be between the individual, not the group, the individual, and the government. It was supposed to keep the government off of our backs, live our lives how we best see fit. So, in that light, in that spirit of this idea, the United States of America, I shouldn't have to opt out. I'm already out. But if I want it, I'd have to opt in. You get what I'm saying? And if you want to do it, go ahead and fund it. These programs will fail so quickly it won't even be funny, because people will take a look. Just take a look at your paycheck and look at all of the taxes that come out. Look how much the income tax takes from you. Look how much your payroll tax takes out of you to fund Social Security. Look how much Medicare and Medicaid takes out of you. Your head spins. I know it does. You look at that and you say, where's all the money? And then people are praying and hoping that they get their tax return. Do you not understand that that's your money to begin with? People are praising the government. Oh, thank God they sent me a tax refund. That's your money, you idiot. How much debt did you have to go into that you wouldn't have had to go into if you had had that money to begin with? I mean, it's really sickening to me, and it's scary, and it's sad. It's sad. I know I use the word idiot a lot. I throw that around loosely. If you take offense to it, I really don't care. But I'm just telling you, I throw it around loosely. So these people, there's a lot of people out there that think it's just a gift from Uncle Sam that comes back to them, at the beginning of the next year. It's not the case. It's not the case. You overpaid Uncle Sam a whole bunch of money that you should never have given him to begin with, because he doesn't know how to spend it right. And if you don't know how to spend it right, that's okay. That's your problem. That's your problem. When the government doesn't spend it right, it's everybody's problem. And that's a big problem. And I have big, major issues with that. So again, ladies and gentlemen, check out usdebtclock.org. Contemplate my opt-in clause to the Constitution. Hey, you want to vote for this stuff? Go ahead and vote for it. But you're going to have to pay for it. And then you'll see. Put your money where your mouth is. That's a big thing with me. You want to do it? Do it. You don't? But don't reach into my pocket to pay for something that I don't believe in. We have a U.S. Constitution that tells us what it means to be a member of this club, the American club, the American society. You don't like it, leave. Very simple. Nobody's keeping you here. You can get on an airplane. You can leave the country. You can get in a car, go to Canada, go to Mexico. Nobody is keeping you here against your will. Don't vote for this stuff. And again, if you do, we'll see who really wants it. I have a big hunch that these things will fail before they get passed. Thank you so much for joining me today, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you. Please like, share, subscribe, get the word out. Leave your comments. I would love to hear from you. This is the Capital News. I am Alex Corraitis. Godspeed.